Hi everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Today we've got a one-story video with full closure. Guy's girlfriend hits him with, "I'm pregnant, buy us a house," out of nowhere. 3 weeks pregnant. No doctor, no discussion, just hand over the down payment. When he asks for a paternity test, her whole family goes to war. But this guy does something most people wouldn't think to do. He checks the math, and the math does not add up. Timestamps below. Let's get into it. My girlfriend announced, "I'm pregnant, you need to buy us a house now." I said congratulations, then asked for a paternity test. Her meltdown over trust told me everything I needed to know. All right, Reddit, buckle up because this one's a ride. My girlfriend of 2 years faked a pregnancy to pressure me into buying a house. Got her entire family involved in the scheme. Tried to baby trap me for real when the fake version wasn't working. Here's how it all unraveled. I'm Nate, 29 years old, and I work in fleet operations for a regional shipping company here in Ohio. Not glamorous work, but I'm good at it. I manage vehicle schedules, coordinate maintenance rotations, handle the budgeting for a fleet of about 60 vehicles. Got my own office with a window that looks out at the parking lot, which isn't exactly a corner suite, but it beats a cubicle. Decent salary, decent apartment, decent life. Nothing flashy, but everything's paid on time and I sleep well at night. I'd just gotten a promotion about 2 months before this whole disaster started. Moved up from coordinator to operations manager, which came with a solid pay bump and actual authority over decision making. My boss told me I was the youngest person to hold the position in the company's history, which felt good. I was planning to bank the extra income, build up my savings, maybe take a trip somewhere I'd never been. Life was trending upward for the first time in a while, and I was enjoying the momentum. My girlfriend Kira, 27, and I had been together for 2 years. Met through a mutual friend at a cookout. Hit it off immediately. She worked as an office administrator for a dental practice. One of those jobs where she answered phones and managed scheduling, but talked about it like she was running the whole operation. She was funny, outgoing, always had this energy about her that made even boring weeknights feel like something. We moved at a natural pace. She had her own place, I had mine, and we'd stay over at each other's apartments 3 or 4 nights a week. Comfortable, easy, no rush. Looking back, there were signs I probably should have noticed earlier. Kira had a way of steering conversations toward the future that always felt slightly aggressive. Not in an obvious way, more like she'd casually mention how her coworker just closed on a house, or how her college roommate was expecting her second kid, and then she'd get quiet and look at me like I was supposed to read between the lines. I'd nod and change the subject because I wasn't ready for those conversations yet, and she'd let it go. Until she didn't. That all changed on a Tuesday night. I was on my couch watching the game, minding my own business, when Kira walked through the door around 9. She'd been out with her friends for dinner and came in with this look on her face like she was about to deliver a State of the Union address. No hello, no how was your day, nothing. Just walked straight into the living room, stood in front of the TV, and dropped it on me. She told me she was pregnant, and that we needed to start looking at houses that weekend. Not, "I have news and we should talk." Not, "Something happened and I need to tell you." Straight to demanding a house. Like she'd rehearsed this moment in the car and skipped the first 3 acts. I muted the TV, took a breath, told her okay, that's big news, and asked how far along she was. She said 3 weeks, 5 tests, all positive. 3 weeks. Something about that landed weird in my gut, but I pushed it aside for the moment. I asked her if that wasn't really early to know for sure. She crossed her arms and said the tests don't lie, and that we needed to be realistic. Said my apartment was too small for a baby, that my lease was up in 4 months, and that it was perfect timing to buy. Buy. We had never once discussed buying property together. Not once. But she had the whole thing mapped out. Said her parents bought their first house before she was born, and that's what responsible people do. The entitlement was radiating off her, but I kept my cool. I told her this was a lot to process, and suggested we make a doctor's appointment first to confirm everything. Then we could discuss next steps. Apparently that was the wrong answer. She looked at me like I'd insulted her entire family tree. Asked if I was saying I didn't believe her. I told her 3 weeks is very early, and we should get medical confirmation before making massive financial decisions. She started pacing the living room, called me difficult, started rattling off daycare costs, yard requirements, school districts, like she had a whole PowerPoint ready, and I was the investor who wasn't buying in fast enough. I made the mistake of pointing out that we weren't even engaged. Her face turned the color of a stop sign, asked me if I needed a ring to take responsibility for my kid, said her friends were right about me. When I asked what friends and right about what, she dodged it completely. Just demanded to know if I was going to step up or not. Because if I wasn't serious about this family, she needed to know now. The manipulation was thick, but I held steady. Told her I wasn't saying I wouldn't step up. Just that we needed to be smart about it. Doctor first, then we talk housing. She grabbed her purse, said she was staying at her mom's place tonight, and told me maybe I'd have a better attitude tomorrow. Then she was gone. I sat there replaying every word. Something was really off. 3 weeks pregnant and already demanding a house purchase. Most people don't even announce a pregnancy that early. I pulled out my phone and started doing research. 3 weeks is essentially right after conception. Most women don't even know they're pregnant at that point. Home pregnancy tests usually can't detect it until at least 4 weeks, sometimes 5 or 6. The hormone levels are just too low. So either Kira had the most sensitive pregnancy tests ever manufactured, or something wasn't adding up. Then I remembered something that made my stomach drop. About 6 weeks before this whole thing, we'd had a massive fight. I'd told her I wasn't ready to buy a house yet. I wanted to save more after my promotion, maybe travel a little. She was furious. Said I was afraid of commitment and keeping her in limbo. The fight ended with her saying she needed to reevaluate our relationship. 6 weeks after that fight, she's suddenly pregnant at 3 weeks and demanding I buy a house immediately. The timing was almost too convenient. I called my older brother Ryan that night. He's got 3 kids, been through the whole pregnancy thing multiple times. Asked him a quick question. How early did his wife know she was pregnant? He said around 5 or 6 weeks. Missed period, took a test, pretty standard. When I told him Kira said she was 3 weeks along, there was silence on the line. Then he said 3 weeks is basically right when conception happens. Even doctors don't usually confirm that early. Told me not to commit to anything yet because something sounded weird. After we hung up, I made a decision. I texted Kira a message that I thought was perfectly reasonable. Congratulated her again on the baby. Suggested we set up a doctor's appointment to confirm everything and get her started on prenatal care. Then I added that I thought we should do a paternity test once it was safe. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I wanted to be completely certain before we made major financial decisions like buying a house. I thought it was measured and fair. My phone detonated within minutes. She called me every variation of disrespectful she could think of. Said a paternity test after 2 years was the most insulting thing anyone had ever suggested. Said I was calling her unfaithful. The texts were coming in so fast my phone couldn't keep up. Each one angrier than the last. The kind of text where you can feel the person's hands shaking while they type. Then her mother called at 11 at night. 11. On a weeknight. This woman who I'd had maybe a dozen polite conversations with over 2 years suddenly had my number memorized and an opinion she couldn't wait to share. Asked me how dare I question her daughter's integrity. Said Kira was carrying my child and I had the audacity to demand a paternity test. When I tried to explain that I hadn't demanded anything, just suggested it as a reasonable step, she steamrolled right over me like I wasn't even speaking. Said if I loved Kira, I wouldn't need a test. That I'd just believe her. That real men don't question the mother of their child. I told her I did believe Kira, but I wanted medical confirmation of everything. Her response was that Kira wasn't doing any test. Either I accept the baby as mine and buy her a proper home, or we're done. Then she hung up on me. Didn't even let me respond. Just delivered the ultimatum and cut the line like she was issuing a verdict. I sat there kind of amazed at the whole meltdown. A simple, reasonable request for a paternity test had turned into an absolute nuclear event, which honestly made me even more suspicious. Because if you're telling the truth, why get that defensive? Why not just say, okay, fine, whatever makes you comfortable? The level of reaction didn't match the situation. Not even close. 3 days later, the meltdown hadn't stopped. It had recruited reinforcements. Thursday morning, her father called me. Her father. We'd met maybe 3 times total in 2 years of dating his daughter. He opened with, "Son, we need to talk about this situation." The familiarity in his voice was wild, considering I could barely remember what the guy looked like. Told me his daughter was pregnant with my baby, and I needed to do the right thing. When I said I planned to, but wanted medical confirmation first, he lost it. Said I was questioning her character and her morals. That I was humiliating his family with this paternity test nonsense. Then he started talking about houses in her preferred neighborhoods. Said they were going fast and I needed to make an offer that week for a baby that allegedly happened 3 weeks ago. When I told him I wasn't buying a house this week because it's a massive decision, he said I should have planned before I got her pregnant and that I needed to be a man about it. Then he dropped the threat. Said if I didn't buy her a house within the next month, he was getting his lawyer involved. Said I wasn't going to abandon his grandchild. Hung up before I could point out that I hadn't abandoned anyone and there was no confirmed grandchild to abandon. Later that same day, Kira's best friend Leah showed up at my office. Actually showed up at my workplace. Walked right through the front door and asked to speak with me. I had to step outside in front of my coworkers like I was being called to the principal's office. She laid into me about breaking her best friend's heart. Said Kira had been crying for 2 days straight. When I explained that I just asked for a paternity test, Leah called it psycho behavior. Said demanding proof that you're the father is insane after 2 years together. Then she hit me with the real kicker. Said Kira had already been talking to a lawyer about child support for a baby that wasn't even born, that hadn't even been confirmed by a doctor. I pointed that out and Leah scoffed. Said maybe Kira was realizing I wasn't the man she thought I was. Then she left in a huff like she'd just delivered some devastating truth bomb, instead of helping me build my case. That night, I called a buddy of mine who's an OBGYN. Asked him a hypothetical. If someone claims they're 3 weeks pregnant, would 5 home pregnancy tests all show positive? He said probably not. Hormone levels are usually too low at 3 weeks from conception. Most tests can't pick anything up until at least 4 weeks, often 5 or 6. 3 weeks would be really pushing it even with the most sensitive tests on the market. I asked what someone would do if they wanted to fake being pregnant early. He said you can buy positive pregnancy tests online, like gag gift type things. Or you could use one from someone who's actually pregnant. He asked me why I was asking. I told him just curious. But I wasn't curious. I was connecting dots that were forming a very clear picture. I also did some digging on her social media. Found something interesting from about 5 weeks earlier. She'd posted a photo at a restaurant with friends. In the background, there was a guy she'd tagged in the photo, then untagged a few hours later. Some dude from her college days, single, lived about 3 hours away. Then I found a Venmo transaction from 6 weeks ago, where she'd sent him $75 with a food emoji next to it. Could be nothing. Could be something. Filed it away. Okay, hold on. Let me jump in here. I love how Nate handled this. Most guys would have caved to the pressure or blown up and started accusing her. He did neither. He called a doctor. He checked the science. He talked to his brother. This man is building a case while her entire family is coming at him with nothing but guilt trips and threats. And here's what I need you guys to understand. Innocent people do not panic over a paternity test. If you're telling the truth, you take the test and prove him wrong. The fact that everybody lost their minds tells you exactly what that test would have shown. Watch what he does next. I didn't confront Kira with my suspicions. Not yet. Instead, I played it smart. I set up a small camera in my living room, pointed at the couch. Nothing illegal. It was my apartment. Then I texted Kira and told her I wanted to talk and work things out. She agreed to come over Friday night. She showed up with house listings, printouts organized by neighborhood, found options with 3 bedrooms, good school districts, under $400,000. Pointed out that my promotion meant I could afford the down payment. When I said, my promotion, that's my money, she corrected me immediately. Said it's our money now because we're having a baby, and I can't be selfish anymore. She genuinely believed that my income was now communal property because of a pregnancy she hadn't even confirmed with a doctor. I pushed back gently. Said we're not married, and if we buy a house together and things don't work out, it gets complicated. She cut me off. Said things will work out if I stop being paranoid. When I mentioned the paternity test again, her face turned ice cold. Said she wasn't doing a test, period. Either I trust her or I don't. So I told her I guess I don't. She said, fine, we're done, and that I'll be paying child support for 18 years. Said her lawyer told her she could get emergency support payments even before the birth. She left after that exchange. Said I'd hear from her lawyer. But here's what she didn't know. At one point during the visit, she left her purse on the couch and went to the bathroom. When she came back, she picked up her phone and made a call. The camera caught everything. I watched the footage that night. She told whoever was on the other end that I wasn't budging, that I wanted a paternity test. Then there was a pause and she said she couldn't exactly tell me the truth because I'd leave. Said maybe the timing was off, that 3 weeks sounded good at the time. Then she said she'd figure it out, maybe push the due date back or something. Then she hung up and walked back to the couch like nothing happened. I replayed that footage 15 times, sat in my apartment at 1 a.m. watching the same 60 seconds over and over. She couldn't tell me the truth about something. The timing was off. 3 weeks sounded good at the time. Push the due date back. Every sentence was a confession she didn't know she was making. She was lying about being pregnant entirely, or lying about how far along she was, or lying about something else. Whatever it was, my gut had been right from the very first night. I didn't confront her about the recording. Instead, I played it cool. Texted her the next day and said I'd been thinking, and she was right. Apologized for doubting her. Said let's schedule a doctor's appointment together so we can hear the heartbeat. She responded within minutes. Couldn't believe I'd come around. Hearts and emojis and excitement. So I asked when her first appointment was, because I wanted to be there. The pause was longer than it should have been. She said she hadn't scheduled one yet because she'd been too stressed. I said no problem, let's call her OB today. She said she didn't have an OB locally and was thinking of going to her mom's doctor a few towns over. A few towns over. When there are perfectly good doctors 10 minutes from her apartment. I said okay, let's schedule it this week. She said she'd check with them and get back to me. She never did. Instead, over the next few days, the house pressure ramped up to an absurd level. Her mom texted about a 4-bedroom she found. Her dad called wanting my salary for a mortgage pre-approval. Leah messaged saying babies need stability. It was coordinated. All of them pushing the same exact agenda. Buy a house now. Nobody mentioned the doctor. Nobody mentioned prenatal care. Nobody mentioned the actual baby. Just the house. Always the house. I started documenting everything. Screenshots of every text. Notes on every call with dates and times. Created a folder on my laptop and organized it chronologically. Every inconsistency, every threat, every emotional manipulation tactic. I also did more research. If someone is actually 3 weeks pregnant, they wouldn't be showing any symptoms yet. No morning sickness, no fatigue. But Kira had been complaining about being exhausted and nauseous every morning since she told me. At 3 weeks. When symptoms don't start until at least 6 weeks? She was performing pregnancy symptoms she'd seen on TV without knowing the actual medical timeline. I called Ryan again, asked hypothetically how someone would fake a pregnancy test. He told me to get her to take a test in front of me. Watch the whole thing start to finish. I texted Kira, asked if she'd take one more test with me present so I could see it with my own eyes. Her response was immediate and furious. Said she'd already taken 5 tests and this was ridiculous. When I pushed, she threatened to block me. If you're actually pregnant, one more test would prove you right instantly. It would end the argument forever. Unless you can't pass that test. Then refusing makes a lot of sense. Wait! Pause for a minute. I need to point something out you might have missed. Not a single person in her circle has asked about a doctor, prenatal vitamins, or a due date. It's all house. That tells you this was never about a baby. This was a real estate scheme with a pregnancy label on it. And the genius move by Nate is, he didn't argue. He just said prove it. One test. And she can't do it. Because she knows the second that stick shows one line, the whole operation is finished. This man has more patience than I ever would. Let's finish this. That weekend, I made my move. Told Kira I wanted to take her out to a nice steakhouse to apologize for being difficult. She agreed instantly, which told me everything about her priorities. The fight, the accusations, the threats, all of it evaporated. The second she thought she was getting what she wanted. 2 weeks of warfare and all it took to reset her mood was the promise of a nice dinner and a house offer. We went to a decent spot downtown, One of those places with cloth napkins and dim lighting where the menus don't have prices. I was charming and apologetic. Everything she wanted to hear. Told her she was right and I'd been paranoid. Said, let's start looking at houses seriously. Her face lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. The transformation was honestly disturbing. 5 minutes earlier, she'd been guarded and testing the waters. And now she was glowing and grabbing my hand across the table like we'd just gotten engaged. She already had a list pulled up on her phone. The 4-bedroom with the big backyard. Still available. When I suggested we put in an offer the following week, she tried to push for that same week, but I told her I needed to get some financial stuff in order first. She accepted that. Barely. Then I asked her casually how far along she was again. She said 3 weeks. I asked about the due date. She pulled out her phone, did some scrolling, and told me early November. I did the math. 3 weeks ago would put a due date in late October at the earliest. November didn't line up. When I mentioned that, she waved it off and said it wasn't an exact science. Back at my place, she started showing me houses on her laptop. Found one for $380,000. Said it was totally doable with my salary. My salary, not ours. Then she told me once the baby was born, she'd be staying home. Obviously. Said daycare was too expensive, and she wanted to bond with the baby. When I hesitated, she told me she wasn't working while raising a kid. That was my job. She had our entire future mapped out. Me buying a house. Me funding everything. Her being a stay-at-home mom. All based on a pregnancy I was now 90% sure was completely fabricated. I let another week go by. Let her think she'd won. Meanwhile, I consulted a lawyer. Explained the situation. He told me if she was using a fake pregnancy to defraud me financially, that's potentially criminal. But I needed proof. Told me to get as much evidence as possible and absolutely do not commit to any major purchases. Friday night, I invited Kira over. Told her I'd gotten pre-approved for a mortgage. She showed up glowing. We sat on the couch and I told her before we put an offer on a house, I needed to see a positive test with my own eyes. Just one. She asked if we were really doing this again. I told her yeah, because something doesn't add up. She ran through the usual script. I told her I bought tests and they're in the bathroom. Take one or we're done. She went into the bathroom. 5 minutes passed. I knocked. She said she was trying, but it was hard to go on command. 10 minutes. 15 minutes. Nobody takes 15 minutes for a pregnancy test. The instructions literally say 3 minutes for results. She was in there either trying to figure out how to fake it or running out of options. The door opened. She said she couldn't do it. Too much pressure. Hostile environment. She was leaving. I asked to see the test. She said there was nothing to show. I walked past her into the bathroom. The test was sitting in the trash can right on top like she hadn't even tried to hide it. One line. Negative. I pulled it out and held it up so she could see it clearly. One line. That's negative. Not inconclusive. Not maybe. Negative. She said the test was faulty. I told her to take another one right now. I had a whole box. She refused. I offered to stand outside the door with it cracked open. She refused that too. Called the whole thing insane and said I was treating her like a criminal. I looked her dead in the eyes and said she was lying. That she wasn't pregnant. She insisted she was. I told her to prove it. One test. That's all it would take to end this entire argument and make me look like the biggest idiot on the planet. One test. She started crying. Said she couldn't believe I was doing this to us. I asked what baby. She just tested negative. She blamed the brand. I told her I bought the same brand she claimed she used. She threatened to leave. I blocked the doorway. Told her I wasn't moving until she told me the truth. She threatened to call her mom. I told her to go ahead, said I'd ask her mom if she knew Kira was lying. Her face went pale. We stared at each other for a full minute. Then her shoulders dropped. The act crumbled like a building losing its foundation in slow motion. She said fine. She wasn't pregnant. Even though I'd suspected it for weeks, hearing it confirmed still hit like a truck. 2 years of my life with this person, and the whole thing was built on a version of her that apparently didn't exist. I asked her why. She said because I wouldn't commit. That we'd been together 2 years and I wouldn't talk about buying a house. She asked what she was supposed to do. I told her the answer to that question was definitely not lying about being pregnant. She said it was supposed to be a push, to get me to take the relationship seriously, to build a future together. I told her she was trying to trap me with a fake baby. She said it wasn't supposed to stay fake. Then she said something that made my jaw drop. She said she thought if we started the process, if I bought the house and we were living together, she could actually get pregnant before anyone noticed the timeline didn't match up. She was planning to baby trap me for real after faking it first. When I made her repeat that just to make sure I wasn't having a stroke, she doubled down. Said it wasn't trapping if we were already in a relationship. I told her it absolutely was. That's textbook manipulation. That's fraud. That's taking away someone's choice about becoming a parent and disguising it as a relationship milestone. She pivoted to blaming me. Said her friends were all getting married, buying houses, having kids, and she was stuck with a guy who wouldn't commit. So she lied about being pregnant, got her entire family to pressure me, tried to manipulate me into buying a $400,000 house. She said she did what she had to do. Zero remorse. Genuine belief that it was justified. The entitlement was breathtaking. She genuinely saw herself as the victim in a situation she had entirely manufactured. I told her to get out. She backpedaled immediately, said we could fix this, that she'd actually get pregnant for real this time. I asked if she was hearing herself, told her to leave. She started crying and begging, said she panicked, that her biological clock was ticking and I wasn't taking it seriously. So her solution to me not being ready was to commit fraud. She actually tried to argue it wasn't fraud because she was going to get pregnant eventually anyway. That's not how any of this works. I told her to leave my apartment. She asked where she was supposed to go. I said her parents' house. The people who helped her try to scam me. She claimed they didn't know and that she'd told them she was really pregnant. Whether that was true or not, I didn't care anymore. Told her to leave or I was calling the police. She finally left, still crying, still trying to justify everything on her way out the door. I sat there processing it. 2 years with someone who was willing to fake a pregnancy to get what she wanted, who recruited her entire family to pressure and threaten me, who had planned to actually trap me with a real pregnancy once she'd secured the house, and who had absolutely zero remorse about any of it. She didn't apologize because she was sorry. She apologized because she got caught. There's a massive difference between those two things. I texted Ryan, told him she was faking it. He came over the next day with food, and we sat on my couch for 3 hours talking through the whole thing. He said he'd had a bad feeling from the moment I first called him about the 3-week timeline. Said the math never made sense, and the pressure campaign from her family was the biggest red flag of all. Normal families don't threaten lawsuits over a pregnancy announcement. They offer support and give you space to adjust. What Kira's family did was a coordinated extraction attempt, and it nearly worked. His wife called me later that night and said she was proud of me for not folding. Said she knew something was wrong the first time Ryan told her about the 3-week claim, because even with her third pregnancy, she didn't get a positive test until almost 5 weeks. She also said that any woman who uses pregnancy as a negotiation tool is not someone you build a life with. I appreciated that more than she probably knows. The following few days were chaos. Her mom called and screamed at me for 20 minutes about how I drove her daughter to desperation. Said any normal man would have just bought the house and been grateful someone wanted to start a family with him. She actually used the word grateful, like I should be thanking her daughter for trying to defraud me. Her dad threatened to sue me for emotional damages. Said I owed them money for the stress I put their family through. Their daughter fabricated an entire pregnancy and weaponized their family against me. But somehow I caused the stress. Leah posted on social media about toxic men who don't support their partners during vulnerable times. Vague enough for deniability, specific enough that mutual friends knew exactly who she meant. I didn't engage with any of it, blocked every single one of them and moved on, except for one thing. I sent a group text to her parents and Leah with a screenshot of our conversation where she admitted the entire thing was fake. For the record, she lied about being pregnant to manipulate me into buying a house. Thought you should know before you keep defending her. Radio silence after that. Complete and total quiet from all directions. The dad who was going to call his lawyer went quiet. The mom who called me cold and ungrateful disappeared. Leah deleted her social media posts within hours. Amazing what a little evidence does to people who've been operating on pure narrative. 2 weeks later, I heard through a mutual friend that Kira had moved back in with her parents. She was telling people I abandoned her during a pregnancy scare. A pregnancy scare. That's what she was calling a deliberate, premeditated fraud scheme now. Rebranding the whole thing as some misunderstanding instead of what it actually was. The mutual friend asked if I wanted to set the record straight publicly. But honestly, the people who mattered already knew the truth. The people who believed her version weren't worth the energy. I did keep the recording of her confession, though. Saved multiple copies in multiple places. She never tried anything legal, probably because her parents eventually figured out that their daughter had committed fraud and didn't want that coming out in any official capacity. Hard to threaten someone with a lawyer when your own kid is the one who broke the law. Last I heard through the grapevine, Kira's single. Moved back home permanently. Telling anyone who will listen that her ex was emotionally unavailable and wouldn't support her dreams of homeownership. The delusion is real, and apparently it's comfortable enough to live in permanently. She's rewritten the entire story in her head so that she's the protagonist who got let down instead of the person who orchestrated a multi-week fraud operation involving her entire bloodline. Some people are just built different, and not in the good way. As for me, I'm good. Still in my apartment, still got my promotion, still got my sanity and my savings account intact. Actually started putting that money I would have spent on a down payment into an investment account. Funny how not getting scammed into a $400,000 house frees up a lot of financial breathing room. My apartment feels bigger now too. Not physically, it's the same 700 square feet it's always been. But the energy is different when you're not sharing it with someone who's running a con on you. Started seeing someone new a few months later. Nothing serious yet, but she's honest and straightforward, and that's a refreshingly low bar that my ex still couldn't clear. First time she disagreed with me about something, she just said it to my face instead of launching a multi-week psychological operation involving her entire family. Revolutionary concept, apparently. We went out for dinner the other week, and she actually asked me what I wanted to do on the weekend. Just asked. No hidden agenda. No manipulation. No pregnancy announcements with a real estate portfolio attached. Just a normal question from a normal person. I almost didn't know how to respond because I'd forgotten what that felt like. My brother Ryan still brings up the whole thing occasionally. He'll say something like, "Remember when your ex tried to buy a house with a fake baby?" And we'll both just shake our heads. His wife thinks the whole story is insane. She told me she knew something was wrong the first time Ryan told her about the 3-week claim, because even with her third pregnancy, she didn't get a positive test until almost 5 weeks. I learned a few things from this experience that I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. When someone's reaction to a reasonable request is completely disproportionate, that's your answer right there. Innocent people don't lose their minds over a paternity test, they just take it and prove you wrong. Pay attention to timelines. Kira's story fell apart the second you applied basic math and biology to it. She built her entire scheme on the assumption that I wouldn't bother checking whether her claims were even medically possible. And when someone shows you they're willing to lie and manipulate to get what they want, believe them the first time. People who are comfortable with deception don't suddenly develop a conscience. They just get better at hiding it. And the biggest lesson of all, trust your gut. Every single instinct I had, from the very first moment she walked through that door and demanded a house, told me something was wrong. The only mistake I made was not acting on it sooner. Your gut doesn't have an agenda. It doesn't want a house or a ring or a baby. It just processes the information your brain is too polite to acknowledge. Listen to it. And that is where this story ends, folks. Honestly, Nate played this perfectly. He never yelled, never begged, just asked smart questions and let her bury herself with her own lies. And the screenshot move at the end, sending that confession to every person who'd been threatening him. Absolute checkmate. One message shut down the entire family. That's what happens when you bring receipts to a guilt trip. If you're ever in a situation where something feels off, do what Nate did. Check the math, document everything, and trust your gut. Like the video, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace. Next one. Peace. Next one. Peace. Next one. Peace. Next one.